you know the old adage, you know, write about what you know, and certainly when you're making a low-budget film or your first film, that's an interesting ground to kind of walk through, partially because of the locations you can get access to, partially because of familiarity with the world. So yes, there is, on some level, probably some influence from the guys I knew growing up, the guys I used to hang around with, and some of those elements might have actually found their way into the film. Also, I was kind of conscious about, in terms of seeing certain Asian people on screen and how their characters tend to be very, one-dimensional, and either they're terrorists, wife beaters, or they resent being from an Asian heritage. And I kind of wanted to just turn that a little bit on its head and show people in a way that I recognise them.
The core of the film is really multicultural, multi-religious and cross-ethnical societies and communities that we live in. So I think not just myself, but all three of the leading actors, Martin and Rez, we all have a mixed ethnic, cultural and religious background from our parenting. So it's quite sort of, poetic casting in a way, that we all sort of fell into that pool by virtue of where we come from and what the film represents.
One of the really interesting discussions me and Atul had during the film is like, do we go for the turban Sikh character, which means having the beard and the turban and everything. And what was really important to me is that I became aware, because I tried to do a little bit of research around the part, that there had never been a turban Sikh character in mainstream Western cinema as a lead character. As filmmakers, you have a responsibility to kind of reflect that culture and do it properly. So, and during discussions we think, should we go that way? Are we creating a rod for our back continuity with beards and turbans and all that kind of thing? But I felt it was really important, and so did Atul, felt it was really important that we reflect it truly.
Yeah, Tony's definitely the token white guy in the film. I think it was interesting, like the part, I really loved it when I read it on paper. I thought, I felt like he was kind of a bit more interesting than me in real life, probably a bit more simple. I like to think I'm a bit more cool than him, but I remember just thinking it was a really interesting take on things. This idea that this guy really wanted to embrace that culture. And as I say, me myself, I had a familiarity with that kind of world, and I like the idea that he was obsessed with that. He kind of threw himself into it, and growing up in Southall, of course, I thought that was a kind of also a positive representation of West London life.
What I found interesting with AMAR AKBAR TONY was that I was always conscious that it's part British indie film and part Bollywood influenced film, and so I was kind of marrying their styles, but also marrying that kind of narrative structure too. And so, for example, there's nods in it to a whole heap of different films and things. So the title sequence has an edit where the kids are kicking a can and they grow up into adulthood, and that's kind of an homage or a complete and utter steal from a Hindi film called Shakti. So that was from that. I think Akbar chatting up Samantha, the reference point was always Buddha Souf of Belmondo and Seberg kind of walking down the streets of Paris. So one of my briefs was, okay, I want to do this on one take. I want to have a walk and talk. I want them to cross the street, and obviously it doesn't have that, but in my head, and she's even wearing the kind of I think the kind of stripy outfit that Seberg wore in Buddha Souf.
Really? You think I'm hitting on you?
Oh, you're not?
No chance. No, you're not even my type.
Okay, so the coffee was
that was
like...
general courtesy.
It's got to be believable that these three friends have grown up together. And I think, meeting Sam and Martin on this movie, who, are not only great actors, but have actually become good friends, I think that kind of really cemented itself. And I hope it kind of comes across on the screen, in the story as well. You've got to kind of believe and like these guys. And I think we certainly developed that and felt that closeness on set with each other.
That was what was quite refreshing about the piece as well when I read it, is it was a coming of age story, but it was about three guys in their journey to true adulthood, really, making those choices in the next phase. How do they settle down? How does that work? And that might take them off in a sort of certain tangent and take them here and there, but I think it all comes from a sort of healthy place,
The only way you're going to marry an 8 to 10 is if you become a doctor.
What ain't going to happen, is it?
It's the unwritten rule.
It's like the caste system for beautiful Indian women.
If she's an 8 to 10, she gets married to a doctor.
Oh, or the ugly son of a rich industrialist.
Lawyers, accountants, business guys, they get the 6 to 7s.
3 and 5s, everyone else.
Everyone else.
It's just the way it is.
Well, I think my gal Nita is looking for a Caucasian prince.
With regards to the women, yeah, he is quite forward, shall we say. Dangerously forward. I actually found that quite challenging. It's probably one of the most challenging characteristics of the character, was to sort of try to pull that off without losing too much of a fan base. You know, you still need to make these characters likable. Perhaps one person would deliver it, another person would deliver it exactly the same way, but the other one would come off so much better, and the other one would get a slap in the face. I would probably get the slap in the face. Akbar doesn't.
You know, the whole experience, you know, hats off to Atul to create this kind of group of people to kind of bring together on this ambitious project and kind of helm that and lead us through that kind of tricky kind of whole, you know, day in and day out on set, you know, long hours, you know, it's not glamorous, but having nice people around obviously made it a pleasure to be on.
Everyone in the team, from the cast and the crew, it was just this beautiful sort of like level playing field where everyone was looking in the same direction and wanted to achieve the same goal and committed to the heart of the story, really. And that was just such a beautiful ensemble experience. But we actually had a couple of weeks to workshop it and improvise around it, and that whole working process was absolutely delightful. It had a sort of theatre work approach to it. But also another thing I'd say is just to celebrate something I'm very proud of being a London, as mentioned earlier, that it is such a wonderful example of multicultural living, diverse, multicultural, multi-religious societies that just seems effortless for the most part. And to celebrate that with this story was really the honour for me.
You know, if you live in London or live in and around London, you know, one of the things I think that doesn't get mentioned often enough is how well we actually get along as different cultures living in this melting pot. And so from that point of view, yes, the film isn't political, and the irony is actually just the fact that people get along and you know, grow up together with different cultures, in a way is making a very interesting political statement, because the fact is we can get along and we do get along, and the film actually reflects that.